So these just arrived with me. These are the brand new Ollo S5X Reference headphones. Let's do a full unboxing and review. Hello and welcome to Geek Talk, where we talk deep and geek about pianos, keyboards, synthesizers, and music production. So a couple of years ago, I did a review on these, which are the Ollo S5X Reference headphones. And ever since then, I've been using these, and they've been a very important part of my workflow. And indeed, my last album, if I may do a shout out, which was released this year, Dark Society, was mixed, and these came in very useful. In fact, my mix engineer, Andy Marlowe, had a pair of these as well. And if you're a producer and a mix engineer, you will know that as you work on your music, you become very accustomed and used to the sound of your room. But of course, when you go to another studio, regardless of how good the studio is, your ears are not used to the surroundings and the setup. So this was indeed the case when we mixed my last record. Was if Andy came here, you know, my sound in here is good, but he wasn't used to the sound of my room, and vice versa. So when we both were wearing a pair of these, we could ensure that we were both on equal footing. Now in this video, I'm going to do a full unboxing of the S5Xs, and throughout this video, I'm going to keep referring back to the unboxing video I did a couple of years ago on the S4Xs here, because these are obviously the newer model, and I want to sort of see how they compare to these, and you know, and let you know if you've got these, do you need to upgrade to these or not. Coming back to these, the S4Xs, the previous model, my good friend and mentor Gareth Jones did receive a pair as well, and we did a review on that. All the links to those videos are in the description below, and it's interesting because you can watch those videos and just sort of see what my feelings were. I'm very honest when I review something. I always give my brutal honest opinion about stuff. So if I endorse something, it's because I use it and I really believe in it. Now on the Ollo Audio website, it's worth mentioning, and I will run through that website with you in a moment. It says that these S5Xs are made for mixing immersive formats. The S5X are optimized for binaural immersive mix translation between headphones, speaker setup, example Dolby Atmos. Now surround sound in 5.1 is nothing new, but with Apple now releasing their their binaural mixing, it's becoming a very big thing, and it is indeed something that a lot of people don't know much about. I myself have been experimenting with binaural mixing, and I'm finding it amazing, and that is why these have come in at exactly the right time for my new mixes. Right, and without further ado, let's start with the unboxing. So first things first is you notice a very straightforward, simplistic looking box. There's nothing sort of self-indulgent about this, and in fact, if you read the Ollo Audio's sort of mission statement, they're all about sustainable material. And indeed, if you look at this set as well, everything on these headphones is replaceable. The cable, the headband, the ear cones, everything. And the great thing about that is, unlike the typical thing where you buy it and it breaks and you throw away, these are a very good investment, because you can have them for many years. If something breaks, you can just replace it. It's all very sustainable, and if properly looked after, you can have years and years of trouble-free use from them. Okay, so it's got a bit of quirky writing on the front. Quirky, but without being pretentious, and signed from Rok Gulic, the founder himself. Okay, so here we go. Open that up. It says, "Save the planet. You can't listen to music in space." Okay. Quirky. It's got this nifty little handle as well. Okay, so you find that. As I say, very quirky. This says, "Listen. If it's there, you are right. If it's not there, you are also right." Okay. And there we have them. Wow, they look amazing. Ta-da! Moment of truth. Okay. Sorry, guys. The smell test. I know that's creepy, but I always smell things. Hey man, it's one of the senses. Okay, so just on first look, very similar looking to the S4Xs, just on, you know, just on initial looks. Once again, these look like the same wood. This is American walnut that they use, and this leather is what they call Nautix leather, so it's synthetic. It's obviously not real, but these do have these kind of like classic. They remind me of these, you know, remember the World War II pilots, just those classic sort of kind of World War II aviator looks. Anyway, let's see what else we have in the box here. So once again, you can see there's nothing more than is needed here. There's no sort of like plastic and all kinds of crap. It's completely functional. Hand built in the edge of the Alps. Jump into the backstage. I love this. So quirky. And I believe this is probably the case. Yeah, there we go. It's got this zipper case. This is a different material. If you look at the S4X as the previous model, they've got this, which is the carry case, and this is also like a synthetic leather. This one seems to be more like a like a synthetic nylon type thing, cotton. Don't know. Okay, and inside we open that. We are greeted with the nice. You got a key ring. No, sorry, a keychain. Sorry. And once again, we have the cord. Now, with the same as with the S4Xs, you know, because everything's kind of replaceable, you don't sort of have left and right, you know, written on the cones, because everything is replaceable. So in order to find where the left one is, you simply need to just find, well, it's usually black's usually left and red is usually right. So as I say, these are very sort of like worky. They've got a real sort of like workhorse kind of look. They don't look domestic. They look very sort of industrial, but they are the bomb. So that's it as far as packaging and everything goes. There is nothing more than you need. It's simply just the headphones, the cable, and the carry case, and of course this funky keychain, which I'm gonna put on, just because it would be rude not to. Okay, so let's have a look at these. Just like the S4Xs, really, really well put together, very, very well built, very sturdy. And I'm just looking at a few slight design differences here. Yeah, they're very similar, but yeah, it just looks slightly better. If you can look at the ear, obviously these are open back headphones, and open back are, you know, usually better for mixing. I know with the S4Xs they also did a closed back design, which was, you know, sort of good for tracking and things like that. You can mix on closed back headphones as well, but open back headphones give you a more sort of balanced neutral sound, I believe. And the cable just clips nicely into the ear cones. There we go, red being right and black being left. Let's just put them on and do the comfort test. Okay, now I am so used to these, so because I use them all the time, and I can instantly say these feel more comfortable. The S4s are not uncomfortable by any means. Yeah, they're very comfortable. But the S5s, they've just got a little bit more sort of that cushioning, and yeah, they feel great. Also, a complaint that Gareth Jones, well, it wasn't a complaint, but a comment that Gareth Jones made, if you check out that unboxing we did. Gareth had a problem with this metal, just, you know, the sort of pinging. You know, you bump it and it kind of pings. Now, I personally did never have a problem with that, but they seem to have solved that problem here, because this really seems a lot more sort of insulated. And how have they done that? It seems as though this is also metal, but it just, I mean, just sort of off the top of my head, yeah, it just seems, I can't actually see why it's, oh, this could possibly be the reason. If you look on the S4Xs, the headband sort of comes, you know, just above the, you know, it's connected there. if you can see what I mean. Whereas with the S5Xs, this headband is connected to that, so it seems to have some kind of dampening effect, so when you hit that metal it doesn't ping so much. Anyway, that was never an issue for me. I know Gareth pointed that out, and it's certainly never been an issue for Gareth either. I also want to make a shout out to Kevin Paul, who was the mastering engineer for my Dark Society album, and Kevin Paul, who was, obviously ex-mix engineer for Mute Records, he also swears by these, so these are really, really great. So, unboxing, what can I say? Very, very similar looking, aesthetically. These look great. When you put them on and people see them, people always go, "Oh, what are they?" Because these do look very, very different. And over the years, I've used many different types of headphones. I have quite a big selection. These are, ones I did recommend. AKG. These are the 7.0. Is it the 712s? These are sort of great, sort of as they call reference, mixing, mastering headphones. Before that, I also had the AKG 701s. Now, I do recommend these usually to people who are starting, because you do need decent headphones. And, these, I'm not here to endorse anything, but I'm happy to talk positively about anything that I feel works. Of course, these are the older classic. Are these the DT1000s? DT100s, yeah, classic. I think these date back to the 70s. And of course, here are some favorites. The Sony, what are these? MDR 7506s, which I've seen Andrew Sheps and Jean-Michel using, which I sometimes use for tracking and stuff like that. But when it comes to mixing and, my sort of like those final critical mix decisions, I have relied heavily on these S4Xs. And they are indeed very, very flat. They are just, in my opinion, the most honest flat headphones I've certainly ever used, and I swear by them. So I'm excited to see what these are like. So let's quickly jump onto the Ollo website, and I'm going to just quickly show you around there. And then just to remind you, afterwards, I am going to be having an interview with Rok, the founder of this company, just to have a chat with him. And here we are at the homepage of olloaudio.com. You can find a link in the description below, and it's a straightforward, clean, easy to navigate website, with obviously featuring the S5Xs for pre-order. So if we click on that now, it takes us to the order page. I see 489 euros is the list price. And they've got obviously an introductory offer here for 449. Now, if you're thinking that's a lot of money, it's not. I often say to people, if you're serious about, good quality music production, then, quality costs money. We're lucky that these days things are significantly cheaper than they used to be, but still there is a minimum you should pay for, if you want your music to sound good, or if you're serious about what you're doing. Now, there are cheaper headphones than this, and there are certainly more expensive ones, but I really find that for this price point, these are excellent. And these have really, I've referenced these and compared these to some of the, I'm not going to mention some names, and this has knocked a lot of the bigger ones out of the park, even ones that are twice the price. I personally would not spend £1,000 or €1,000 for a pair of headphones. I just don't see the point in it. I know, like my friend Gareth Jones has got some really, really high, I think they're Focals, I think they're thousands of pounds. There, I've just mentioned a name. But, for me, these are, I personally don't feel you need to spend more than this. Your ears become used to what you're mixing on. But these are, as I say, I haven't listened to the S5Xs yet, but certainly the S4s, very, very, very flat, very, very transparent, very, very honest. And that's what you want when you're mixing. You do need to invest a little bit in your craft. And the great thing about this is if you buy these, understand that if you look after them, you could have them for the rest of your life, because they are that well designed, and of course all the parts are exchangeable. There we go, made for mixing, immersive formats once again, with surround mixing and binaural mixing becoming such a big thing now. Once again, 5.1 and Dolby Surround. It's not a new thing. It's been around for a long time, but certainly with Apple now putting the emphasis on their binaural mixing, it's becoming something that's very, very famous and sought after. And indeed, I think it's probably going to become the standard by which we mix. We've come from mono to stereo being left and right, binaural now being, left, right, back and center, up and down. And so it gives you a lot of more mixing options, and it helps you really create more space in your mix. The website, as I say, straightforward. You've got all the technical schematics on here. You can see they've got on the previous video I showed you, they compare like previous headphones where you can, compare the frequency responses of these Ollo headphones as opposed to, some well-known brands. But yeah, come onto this website, check it out. You'll see some of their other models here as well. If we just go back here, click here, headphones over there. So you've got the S5Xs, and those are the ones that I currently use at the moment. There we go, for mixing, mastering, enjoying, flat out of the box. And then also in their range as well, they also have the S4Rs, which are essentially the same as the S5Xs, but they're basically a closed back design, and these are sort of good for sort of tracking and things like that. You can also mix on them. They're not open back, so they're probably good if you want to sort of like mix on a train or a plane or something like that. But yeah, check out the website for yourself. Everything is here. I'm now going to plug in the S4Xs and the S5Xs, and I'm going to just have a quick comparison. Okay, so I've got them set up. The S4Xs in output 1 and the S5Xs in headphone output 2. So this is probably a little bit silly because you'd need to compare these yourselves, but I just want to do like an initial just sort of reaction to what the differences are. So let's, I'm using Depeche Mode's Violator album, of course, and I've got Enjoy the Silence because I know that song very, very well, obviously. And so let's just see what the initial thoughts are. So first of all, S4Xs, let's hit play. And of course, this is the S4Xs that I'm so accustomed to. And then we'll quickly jump over to the S5Xs. It's the same family sound. Well, definitely the same kind of, take these glasses off. S4s. It's very close. It's very, very close. There is a difference, however. I seem to think that the S4Xs are, they seem to be a little bit more honky. What I mean by honky is, it's sort of like you get that like honk in the sort of like the lower mids. So it seems, and of course this is just on first reaction here, I don't want this video to go on forever. These do seem flatter. Wow, because these to me are flat, and these seem even flatter. As I say, I'd have to go through it in a lot more detail. But just on initial listen, remember, I'm very used to the S4Xs. There seems to be a little, these seem a little bit flatter. There seems to be less honk in the sort of maybe 400, 300 area. You know, in those kind of muddy areas, there are many frequencies where you get mud, 300 being one, 400 being another one, 500 being another one. I don't want to get too geeky here, but and of course, when we speak to Rok later on, we will ask him what exactly he's done, because they've obviously applied certain EQ curves or whatever they do to obviously get the flattest sound possible. You just hear the stereo width. Yeah, the sort of stereo imaging and the width and everything is... It's all very, very similar. It's all very, very similar. As I say, I'd need to listen to this, and indeed I'll do that afterwards. I will listen to them in detail, but just sort of off the bat on an initial listen like that, you're essentially getting the same, it's the same family sound. Once again, I'm just noticing there is a more honk type sound in the S4Xs, so which doesn't seem to be there on the S5Xs. Now, you don't notice the kind of honk sound. It's like a honk, that kind of something in the lower mids, which is absent in the S5Xs. But of course, you don't notice it until you compare them. So just on that quick initial comparison, I'd say the S5Xs are beating them, and that is amazing, because, you know, I do swear by these. So let me go and have a little bit more of a detailed listen now, and I will get back to you. Right, so what's the verdict? I've had a little bit more of a detailed listen to them now, just with a few tracks that I know very, very well, including some of my own songs that I know very, very well because I mix them, and indeed songs that I'm working on at the moment. And I've also checked how this, because this is really, as their marketing says, is really sort of focused on the binaural mixing, and I really noticed that is where this one really tends to shine, the S5. When you putting a stereo mix on, like something like the Violator album by Depeche Mode, which is one of the most outstanding albums of all time, as far as I'm concerned, and a lot will agree. The difference when listening to something like Depeche Mode's Violator is, I'll put it to you this way: if you gave these headphones to someone who wasn't a musician and a producer, they would probably struggle to hear the difference. Although some people might. I'm just assuming. You know, usually us as producers, our hearing is more trained. But there is actually, there is a difference. However, it's the same type of sound. It's a real sort of, it's the same, what I'd like to call the Ollo family sound. So when you hear the S4Xs, which I'm very, very accustomed to, and you put these on, you recognize the sound. It's almost like meeting a family member. If you've got a friend and then you meet their brother or sister, you go, oh, I see the resemblance. So it's kind of like there's this common family sound. But upon further listening, and indeed when I had my initial listen, I said there is like a honk sound here, which is not present on the S5Xs. Now, not in a bad way. It just seems as though these are flat, but when you listen with these, the newer version, you realize that these are even flatter, and you realize, oh, okay. So that leaves the question: if you own a pair of S4Xs, should you upgrade to these? And, well, I'm certainly not going to get rid of these, the S4Xs, because although they're the same family sound, they are a different sound, but not different. It's close. It's very close. I guess what I'm saying is, if you listen to the S4Xs and then the S5s, and you are a producer and your hearing is attuned to it, as producers are, you will notice that it is indeed the same family sound, but this does beat it only slightly, not massively. But when you bring it onto the binaural stuff, as I say, I'm busy working on a track which I'm mixing in binaural, that is where this does win. The S5X does win. Now, I'm keen to speak to Rok about that, which in this interview afterwards, and just ask him what the approach was, how he did that, because it's really, once you flip, when you listen to something that is binaural, and in my case, going onto Logic, the session that is in binaural, when we're comparing them in stereo, the most noticeable difference really is this is the S5 is a bit flatter, so far as there is that sort of like lower mid honk, which is not there. Not that it's bad on this, it's just that you don't know it's there until you listen with these ones, then you notice that it is there, and it's not in a bad way. There is a noticeable difference here, albeit very subtle, but it's not that noticeable that it blows this one out the water, because there is still a place for this, the S4Xs, and indeed I should think a lot of people are going to be probably selling these now and upgrading to these. And I'm saying to you, if you're in the market for a good pair of headphones and you can find a pair of second-hand S4Xs, definitely go for them. They are amazing. If you're looking to buy a first pair, these I think are amazing, and also because you know, you're investing in your future, you're investing in, you know, the longevity, and also the fact that you can actually change the parts as they break. And also, now that music is really moving into binaural and surround sound mixing, it will be a very good investment. Check out Jean-Michel Jarre's new Oxymore album, which was mixed in surround binaural, which is an absolute masterclass. And in fact, I did have a quick listen to it with these, and wow, did it make it shine. Hope you enjoyed that. Please leave your comments below. I'm going to have a chat with the brilliant designer of these headphones now, Mr. Rok Gulic. Mr. Rok Gulic, how are you, sir?
I'm fantastic. Always excited to talk to you, George.
It's good. It's good to finally meet you. I know we connected about 2 years ago, when you sent me a pair of these that I've been using very faithfully for the last 2 years. But you've made an improvement now, which is the S5Xs, and that's what we're going to talk about today. But first things first, just tell us a little bit about you and Ollo, and you know, how you got into this.
Oh, well, it's a fairly straightforward story, basically. I got married, you know, so that created 3 little kids, first twins and then another girl, which the joy of my life, without a doubt. But you know, the space for music was kind of, or specifically time, was kind of limited. And as I was mixing records for my band, you know, the rumble of the speakers was kind of too much at 1 a.m. and stuff like that. So I explored what can I do with headphones, basically. And we're talking 7 years ago, roughly 8 years ago. And I couldn't really find something really good and made for professional use, specifically on the low end, right? So the low rumble, the feel of the vibration, all of that was kind of not really available. So the more I explored headphones, the more I saw that this bass kind of situation is missing. And so I made my own bass tactile transducer, basically for the chair, a pillow, basically. And that started the company, honestly. And as we evolved, we also, or basically it was just me back at those times, I've learned that even headphones are really not tuned for professional use. That there are some specific requirements. There is some misconception of what flat is, and so on. So the more I dived into it, I've learned that actually I have quite a lot of knowledge to create a headphone that could potentially be, you know, flat and used by audio engineers. And as I did version 1 and version 2 and version 3, the more requests came in from friends and so on to have those. And at some point, I was, you know, introduced to a local startup ecosystem. I was invited there. Was happy and lucky enough to get a little bit of funding, which made it possible to leave the previous job and just do that full time. And within about a year, I had the S3 model, which was the first model that we launched and start selling. And that just kind of like grew and grew all the way to S4 that you have right there. Actually, the S4X, which is already the third iteration of it. Yeah. And now we are at the S5. And that's kind of briefly how everything happened. Oh, you got it there.
Absolutely. Now, as a full disclaimer to the viewers here, I've just done the review video, and Rok has got no idea what I've said in the video.
No.
Uh, but Rock, I've always said I will. I don't do many endorsement videos on my channel. I probably
Yeah.
should because I'd make more money. But to me, my integrity and honesty are much more important. And I will
Mm,
only. So when I say I believe in something and it's good, I really mean it. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah.
So so really, thanks for that introduction. And as I say, I'd love to come and see the factory in Slovenia sometime when I'd love to come and see you guys there. But it really, to me, is a sort of cottage industry success story. You know, it's like there's nothing convoluted about it. It was literally just a guy mixing, going, "Why is this technology not available? I'm going to do it."
Mm.
And so that's where. So I love the humble origins of it, and you've obviously got into something more successful. But listen, I just want to sort of talk about obviously the headphone market is very, very saturated. There's a lot of competition. Everyone likes to say their headphones are flat and stuff, and it's not until you hear something that is closest to flat as possible. Apparently there's no such thing as flat. But
Yeah.
the first time I heard yours, the S4s, I went, okay, wow, this is really. It almost sounded to me like a Yamaha NS10 in headphones.
Yeah.
It's just like a. So it's well, not as bad sounding as an NS10, but it is very very honest. And I said in the beginning of my unboxing video that when we mixed my Dark Society album, that's just
Yeah.
a quick shameless shout
Sure.
out.
Yeah.
Obviously I was working with my mix engineer Andy Marlowe, and I've got my studio, he's got his studio. But as I was saying, is it doesn't matter how good a studio is, you are used to your own studio. So here's some advice to the listeners and to my students. I always say, get a pair of headphones that are the same as your mix engineer, so when you're sitting with each other you can double check the mixes and you've got the same, regardless of where you are, you're on equal footing. But
Mm.
now, without preaching too much, I just want to sort of get onto, and you'll obviously see the video afterwards. I did a sort of a quick reaction between the S4 and the S5s. Then, of course, I switched the video off and I listened for about an hour on mixes that I know. So it takes a while to get accustomed to them. But just on the first sort of initial
Yeah.
few listens, few seconds,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
noticed that it's the same headphone, it's the same family, but there
Yeah.
is something different. And the thing I noticed straight away was on the initial, and we can get into this now, is it has less honk. Now, when I say honk, there's
Mm.
something in the lower mids which has been tamed in a good way. Now, that's interesting because these sound very flat, and they are. But when you put these on, you go, these might just be flatter. So
Uh-huh.
is there something you've done in the sort of lower mids? Is there something like a roll off or something, a dip?
Yeah. Well, it could be a very long debate about everything that we did and went into that model. But yes, it is, as you and your ears successfully figured out, it's basically the same structure, it's the same chassis, it's the same principles involved in acoustics. So yeah, of course, they will kind of feel or sound similar, right? Like, you have Neumanns over there. You can buy the 30 or the 50 or the 80, right? They're all from the same family. They will have kind of the same sound signature. So that is there. S5 is still all a headphone and still for mixing, right? In terms of just this frequency response debate or the flatness debate, right? Well, flat is different for different purposes. That's just pure and simple. So what we've discovered is that in stereo mixing, it's very welcome to have a little bit more mid-forward monitoring. And that is the S4X. They are fairly well balanced, but still mid-forward headphone. You will have really nice vocals, really cutting through, and you also have this kind of honkiness if you want, but it's just right. So when you hear something kind of like a little bit muddy, it means it is muddy. So you need to fix that. The moment you fix it at just the right level, where it's still full, kind of like full body experience in the sound, you're just right. That will translate perfectly for a stereo mix. I promise you that. Now the S5 is again flat, but how can they sound different and be flat? Well, because we have different flat kind of ideas. So instead of mixing stereo, we are now mixing or thinking about doing immersive mixing. So Dolby Atmos, for example, or Sony or whatever. And the experience or the perception of audio that is spatialized in 360 around you requires slightly different frequency response than stereo mixing, because we pick signals of localizing sound, basically spatializing sound, more from the high-end presence. And that's why we've had to change a little bit the low mids and the lows. They were just trimmed down slightly. The mids are kind of where they were, and the highs are also trimmed up a little bit. So it's kind of like, if we are thinking about S4 would be like kind of like very warm, the S5X are a little bit more to the colder side, right? But they are still both flat. You can use them both for any job, or stereo or immersive. But if you want to go like into details, well, then the S4 is for stereo mixing. The S5 series are for immersive mixing. Specifically, Dolby Atmos is a great choice for that.
Absolutely, and I said in my review video that this is really 5.1 and Dolby Surround. That's not new; it's been around for a long time, but it's kind of coming back in a big way now, because with and I've told the guys on the video they should listen to Jean-Michel Jarre's new Oxymore album. I've just reviewed that, and it's it's not a very musical album, it's more sound effects and stuff. But it is a masterclass, and certainly a great way to showcase this kind of mixing. And of course, Apple have now come in with they're really doing a push on their binaural mixing, as they call it. And I'm actually just mixing a track at the moment. Binaural's not difficult, actually. I think it's people thought, this is going to be the standard by which things are done now, as we look at Apple Music and things like that now as well. And I think some people are scared off by it, but I've actually found it's actually easier to mix in binaural, because instead of just having left and right, you've got the whole sphere. You can really move things away. And coming back to my A/B analysis, when I actually put these, as I say, I'm working on a track at the moment where I'm doing binaural mixing, and when I put the S5s on, it was like, then I realized, okay, this is what it's tailored to. So and that's exactly what you said there in your in the adjustment that you made. It just seems to, I don't know what the magic or the science is, but it just seems to the S5s, when you're listening to a binaural mix, it seems to find the detail better. Is that accurate to say?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that comes basically from listen. So from your life experience, right? If you have a speaker in front of you and you're like 1 meter away, that's like what, 3 feet away, you will probably hear all the frequencies kind of in the same way. If you move further away, the high end will start to kind of drop and dissipate, right? So, a mile away from a concert, all you hear is the low rumble, basically, that reaches that far. And that's due to just air impedance, basically, right? The air is stopping the transmission of high level of waveforms, basically, right? Vibrations. And that's just absolutely true. So when we want to localize something as close or near us, we actually rely, as human beings, our brain learned that, there is more high end in those signals that we are picking up. So in order to simulate that, we need to spatialize audio using Dolby Renderer or whatever, and rely on that fact, right? So in order to have it in a signal, you need the renderer part and obviously the source, but then you need to have the playback device that is also tuned to mimic that, or basically to support that idea. So if you would have like super dark headphones, any dark headphones or dark speakers, the translation of the spatialization information will be just basically lower. Everything will be more like together. So that is the core of the design of our headphone, how we came up with the frequency response, how we tuned it. It is basically just to promise all of you guys that whenever you're going to mix in Dolby or other systems in a 360 panel or whatever, the translation will be there. And that is the core of professional audio gear, right? Just as the S4, you said, like, they could be a little bit muddy. Yeah, but that is because the mix is on the high level of muddiness, right? If it's clean, it's just always going to be clean. And that is the point of having calibrated monitors, either in audio or in video.
No, and that's a great explanation, Rock. And I think a lot of people now with this, with this binaural mixing that's become such a big thing at Apple now. I have a lot of people in my community and students of mine saying, Vaughn, do I need to start mixing in binaural? And I'm going, yes, you do, really, because that's like the next thing. Now you don't have to, but you and I'm pleased to say it's actually easier because it actually gives you more space. I think a few of the questions I've had from a few students are, and you've actually answered this, Rock, is it's a little bit like, when you're mixing in stereo, it's very good to check it in mono all the time to make sure it translates. But now the questions I'm getting is, if you're mixing something in binaural, what happens when I collapse it to mono and then to stereo? Are the parts going to disappear? And my answer to that is the same rules apply. It should work in all things, and that's exactly what you've done here. It's basically, with the S5s, it's to enable you to mix in, binaural, but make sure that it translates well to stereo and mono. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean that. So how I experience feedback from audio engineers and consumers, right, is that there's this idea of headphones are just a necessity. Headphones are just to help you stay quiet, right? There's very few, but more and more every day, people who really understand that headphones are a tool. And as such, it's a tool to help you to achieve something, whatever that something might be. So you need to understand the principles around what you're doing first, and then just use the gear that gets you to your final destination. So just buying our headphones will not make you a Dolby mixer. You will not just overnight be a success or whatever, but it's the right tool for the job. And that's extremely, extremely important to understand that these kind of headphones that are specifically tuned, just as the S4, are made for one specific task. And you need to understand what that task is and the principles around it. And that has actually very little to do with headphones themselves. Mixing is basically an art of conveying emotions using technology, right?
No, you're absolutely right, and it was interesting because during my video, I said, obviously whenever a company releases the new model, it supersedes the old one, and the old one becomes discontinued. But then I realized towards the end, as you've now emphasized, Rook, is that the S5 doesn't necessarily replace the S4s. It is basically it fulfills a different need. So exactly. At the end of my video, I said, if you've got a pair of if you've got the S4s, should you sell them and buy the S5s? Well, no, you should. And this sounds like marketing, and Rock hasn't paid me to say this, but it's almost like you need both. Well, you don't, but I just think if you've got S4s and you want to upgrade to S5s, then do that, but don't sell the S4s. Keep them both. And now, I'm not now to all the wives in the community of the geeks. I'm not trying to tell your husband to spend more money, but they do, like me now. I've got the S4s for stereo, and then I've got these for binaural. But I think if you were going to just buy one pair, it wouldn't be a problem to just buy the latest one, because then you're basically covered, for stereo and
still. Imagine that you spend 50 grand or whatever in designing a really good studio, and say, just certify it for Dolby, for example, right? What do you think? Can you mix a stereo album in there? Well, yeah, of course you're going to mix a stereo album in a good studio, right? Although it is going to be tuned differently than a traditional stereo will be. Right? the position of the speakers is slightly different. Just the target frequency response is slightly different. Especially if it's certified, it's definitely going to be different. But you will still deliver stereo mix if you want to, without any problems, because the differences are not that huge. It's actually more important when it comes to how we perceive sound based on just sound from headphones versus how we perceive sound in a room. And there's quite a lot of differences, specifically when we are comparing immersive mix versus a stereo mix. And that's where we focused our attention to in designing the headphone with acoustic parameters that will actually work. So to keep it short, if you were to capture with an ear simulator, is what we actually did, and you can find that online, room response of a certified Dolby Studio or Sony Studio or whatever. If you were to capture that response with the ear simulator and then put on that ear simulator our headphones, and you would think you will see exactly the same curve, but that's not the case. So how is this possible, right? If you are simulating sound coming to your eardrum, either it's coming from a headphone or if it's coming from a speaker from over there, what is the difference? The frequency response should be the same if we were simulating that. And yes, technically we can say, yeah, but there's also this psychoacoustic part of music that is extremely important. So imagine, like, I don't know, very simple, something that everyone can relate. If you would have your speakers, the noise behind you, turned up to 90 dB, that would be pretty goddamn loud, right? Going beyond to 95, that's like almost on a rock concert, right? Getting close. And you wouldn't really be there for multiple hours. But when you put your headphones on, you're easily at 95 dB SPL at your eardrum, but you have no idea you're there. It just feels like, oh, maybe it's a little bit louder, but it's not really loud. So the perception of loudness in general is very different from a room than it is when the speakers are mounted right here. So that led to a question. Right? So, all right, so now if we are tuning rooms specifically for immersive audio, shouldn't we tune headphones specifically for immersive audio too? And the answer is yes, obviously, let's explore it. And the more we dived into it, the more we've seen that the target curve for immersive mixing on headphones should be nothing like the target curve in a room for immersive, and definitely nothing like just a stereo target curve for headphones, like the Harman target curve or diffuse field and stuff like that. So we went really deep into all of that. First, the technical side that I mentioned before with ear simulators, and secondly, doing human subject A/B testing. Basically, engineers doing, oh yeah, that sounds kind of the same as the room. No, it doesn't. I need more of that, more of this, less of that, and so on. We captured all of that information and used that as weights for the base that we've developed just using ear simulator. So now that we had all of that combined, we could then derive the final target curve, which actually translates an immersive mix using headphones between the speaker setup or binauralized version. And that is what the S5X are all about. Yeah.
That is amazing, yeah, and you're very good at because you're obviously a very technical person. You're a very talented man, but you're able to explain things. I'm quite good at that as well, at explaining things in a simplistic kind of way. But then what I'm explaining is not that difficult. You're explaining something that's very complex, but you're explaining it in a very easy to understand way. So what I think we should do, Rok, I think maybe we should have another video later, because this whole binaural thing is coming in. I'd like to do not a regular, but an occasional catch up with you where we can talk about things. Maybe we can get Kevin Paul on as well, who's also an Ollo user. He did the mastering of my album, and he also he mixed all the Depeche Mode stuff in 5.1. So it would be interesting if the three of us could have a three-way conversation about 5.1 binaural mixing.
Absolutely.
This is definitely the way forward. Finally, the S5Xs. On your website, it says for pre-orders. So they're
Mm.
they're not actually available at this moment.
Well, I don't know what happened, but in the past few months, we basically sold out everything we've had. So there is no S4R available, there is no S4X available, and right now we are shipping S5X to the people that pre-ordered quite some weeks ago. So yeah, right now, at the moment of recording this, we are still in pre-order phase, and we will stay in pre-order as long as, well, until basically we built enough stock to be able to deliver promptly. So yeah, we are out of stock, and you need to secure yours if you want to have them for mid-December, right, for Christmas. And I think the next batch will be ready late January, and then the next one only in March. So it's kind of like you need to reserve yours if you are planning on getting the S5X.
You guys are getting busy, and that's good.
Yeah, it's been good. Yeah,
And they're all hand assembled. They're all made there.
yeah. That's also one of the reasons why. Just for clarification, we are a very small company, right? In comparison to, Biodynamic or Sony or whatever, this is like we are non-existent, right? Like super small company. But that also means that whenever we launch our products, and that happened in the past as well, there's just too much of our own community, basically, our community, that wants to get the latest and the greatest, but we just don't have the capacity to feel that in a month or two. It takes quite a few months, maybe half a year, when we are kind of trying to catch up with the demand, and eventually we do. And this is where and when all of our headphones will be again available, with a click and the next day delivery. Yeah.
Well, that's brilliant. Well, listen, mate, you're obviously doing something right, because it's better than having a lot of stock that people don't want. So you're obviously...
Yeah. Thank you.
Right, so guys, check it out. This is Rok Gulic from Ollo Audio. It is olloaudio.com. You can check the links in the description below. Leave your comments below. Reach out to Rok. He's a very approachable guy. And yeah, if you've got any questions, give me a shout. I'll be happy to answer them. Rok, thank you so much, my friend. I look forward to seeing you on the channel very soon.
Thank you. Bye.